Hello, I'm Myrna Loy. Like most of you, I've been interested in our presidential candidates and getting to know their wives. So I thought you might like to visit Mrs. John F. Kennedy. Mrs. Kennedy has had to be fairly inactive in this campaign, but a few weeks ago she was interviewed on television. I'd like to bring you some of her answers. The first question was, Dr. Benjamin Spock had endorsed Senator Kennedy for president. Was Mrs. Kennedy raising Caroline according to Dr. Spock?
I suppose I do. I always imagined I'd raise my children completely on my own, but once you have them, you find you need help. So I do read Dr. Spock a lot, and I find it such a relief to know that other people's children are as bad as yours at the same age.
Then Mrs. Kennedy was asked, did it seem strange not to be campaigning with her husband?
Oh, yes, I miss very much campaigning with my husband in this major endeavor of his life. I would be if I wasn't expecting a baby. But I've campaigned with him ever since we were married in 1953. I counted I've been in 46 states with him.
All politicians' wives say they love campaigning. Does Mrs. Kennedy really love it?
Well, I tell you why you do love it. Granted, the exhaustion is there, but you're with your husband in the major endeavor you share. And then when you look back on it, you've seen so much of the country, all the people you've met. It's just made you a person that you weren't before. So I would never part with one of the experiences I've had.
All women want to know the answer to this question. Does your husband want a boy or a girl?
He's wonderful about it. He never said that he wanted either, even in Caroline's case. And I think he probably wants a boy even less now, because he's so delighted with this girl. I think he'd like another.
In California, Senator Kennedy was saying it was going to be a boy. What did Mrs. Kennedy have to say about that?
Well, maybe he's right.
Mrs. Kennedy was asked what she thought about living in the White House. Did she think a First Lady influenced the life of the White House or vice versa? Had she thought about that?
Yes, I don't think the White House ever can completely belong to one person. It belongs to the people of America. And I think whoever lives in it, the First Lady, should preserve its traditions and enhance it and leave something of herself there. But she shouldn't just leave it an empty museum.
What kind of life would Mrs. Kennedy try to make for the senator if he became president? Would she socialize much?
Well, I must say I don't think there's very much time for socializing, because the president puts in such long days that he must be preserved rather than expended all. But of course, you would do official entertaining, and I don't think that should be treated as a drudgery. It should be a joy and done as graciously as possible.
Did Mrs. Kennedy ever wish her husband weren't a busy candidate?
No, I'm so glad he is. In the beginning, I wished that. When I was first married, our life was almost as hectic as it is now, and I found it rather hard to adjust. But now I think politics is one of the most rewarding lives a woman can have, to be married to a politician. I think every woman wants to feel needed, and in politics you are, so much more than in many other fields. You're always living in a state of crisis. You're always being demanded to meet a challenge. And when you meet it, it's a great satisfaction to me.
Isn't she charming? You have just seen an interview with Mrs. John F. Kennedy. Mrs. Kennedy has told us much about herself, her husband, and what she thinks a president's wife can mean to the president and to the country.